Statements are used to compute values, assign values, and modify attributes, among many other things. Here are 3 examples of more specialized statements. The return statement is used to return values from a function. Another example is the import statement, which is used to import modules, and we have seen examples of this statement before. Finally, the pass statement is used to do nothing in situations where we need a placeholder for syntactical reasons. Let's then talk about compound statements. Compound statements contain groups of other statements, and they affect or control the execution of those other statements in some way. Compound statements typically span multiple lines. A compound statement consists of one or more clauses, where a clause consists of a header and a block or suite of code. The clause headers of a particular compound statement start with a keyword, end with a colon, and are all at the same indentation level. A block or suite of code of each clause, however, must be indented to indicate that it forms a group of statements that logically fall under that header. There are no hard and fast rules about indentation as long as you are consistent. Using a tab or using 4 spaces are probably the most common choices. Whatever you choose, stick to it. Here's an example of a compound statement with one clause. Line 1 here is the header line, and lines 2 and 3 form the block of code. Let's look at this compound statement in a little bit more detail. On line 1, we first ask if x is greater than y, followed by a colon. If this is true, if x really is greater than y, then Python will run lines 2 and 3. On line 2, we're calculating the difference as x minus y, and on line 3, we're printing out the message x is greater than y. Regardless of what happens with the comparison, line 4 will always get printed. In most programming languages, indentation is not compulsory. A key point to realize here is that in Python, indentation is not just cosmetic. The way you indent your programs determines the logical structure of your programs. Let's then look at the Python if statement in more detail. The if statement selects from among one or more actions, and it runs the block of code that's associated with the first if or elif test that happens to be true. If none of these are true, then it runs the else block. In this example, we're interested in computing the absolute value between x and y. Remember, the absolute value tells us how far 2 numbers are from one another. On line 1, we ask first if x is greater than y. If that is true, on line 2, we will assign absolute value as x minus y. If the if statement on line 1 fails, we'll next look at line 3. There we're asking if y happens to be greater than x. If that's true, on line 4, we will define absval as y minus x. If that's also not true, then Python will proceed to line 5, which is the else statement. In that case, we will define absval as being equal to 0 on line 6. If it turns out that x is greater than y on line 1, the other conditions will not even be evaluated. Remember, Python goes through these different conditions in if and elif clauses until it finds the first statement that is true. If all else fails, Python will then execute the else statement. If you ever actually wanted to calculate absolute values, you could use the built-in abs function. In this case, we chose this example just to demonstrate how the if statement works.